This video is going to be a film study look at how Jahmyr Gibbs carried the load for the Lions on Sunday in their 31-29 win over the Vikings. He put up 116 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns against one of the best run defenses in the NFL. His first 100-yard game of the season, in fact, but despite that, he has 81 carries for 464 yards on the year, 5.7 yards per rushing attempt. Truly unique, if you ask me, weapon across the entirety of the NFL. 5 rushing touchdowns. Meanwhile, 18 of 22 catches to targets ratio. Really insane statistics. He's got 6 overall touchdowns on the year, 5 rushing touchdowns, like I said, 1 receiving touchdown. Had 2 on Sunday against the Vikings. I believe he was a huge difference in that game. That 45-yard touchdown early kind of plugged in the Lions offense, and they just really got on a roll. He's got over 600 yards of offense in 6 games, his second year in Detroit. It's so interesting, the dynamic between Montgomery and Gibbs. There's games where one guy takes over in certain periods, and then the other guy has a larger impact later on in the game. They really play off of each other well. I think Ben Johnson utilizes their skill sets perfectly. Let's get to the film. We're going to have about 12 plays to go over. Early on, Minnesota's defense was playing with a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and certainly I think the defensive tackles gave the interior offensive line trouble for the Lions. So 97 is an absolute load. So is Tillery on the inside. The fact that eventually they were able to get things done on the ground, like I said, Gibbs ended up with 116. Look at how these guys are moving some of the Lions' offensive linemen, particularly 97. I see why there was so many holds. He takes outside leverage here, and then once he thinks Gibbs is going to dedicate to the inside, 44 commits to that same gap. Phillips, 97, basically sheds the offensive lineman in whatever direction he wants him to go. Gibbs cuts off of it, gets 5 yards. It's an impressive play from a Gibbs standpoint, just because I think you've got 2 wins at the interior defensive lineman position for Minnesota on one particular play. This is first quarter, actually the Lions' second possession after the failed 4th down fake punt. It's going to be a sack of Goff. Those guys were playing with so much speed early on. The fact, after watching the All-22 and end zone angle film, the fact that Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, and those guys were able to adjust, change gears, and really just take control of the game is mind-blowing. Because Minnesota, when I go back and watch the first 3 possessions, I'm like, wow, they're absolutely playing at a different speed. As an aside, this is one of those 3-man rush situations where they drop basically 2 guys in the middle of the field. I love it. I've never seen it before. I would call it an 8-man drop with a Tampa 2. Generally, in most cases, and if you ask me, gave Goff pause because he was looking for open seams in the defense, and more often than not, there was a guy in the lane. Like on that particular case, 3rd and 3, he tries to scramble, and Pace tackles him for no gain. Moving forward to their 3rd possession, this is Montgomery on the failed 3rd and 1, where he gets injured. In fact, one thing to note here about Minnesota's defense, and Flores does this often. There's actually more things that I begrudgingly like about his defense after watching the film, and this is a 6-2. So there's 4 down linemen, OLB, OLB. I would say this is 2 inside linebackers, but really, what the heck is 44? He plays a little bit of safety, a little bit of inside linebacker, occasionally plays nickel. It's a 6-2 alignment by the way they're standing up, how they're positioned pre-snap. And they dominate again at the interior line position and basically disrupt the whole play concept or runs concept. 44 is in there as well to stop Montgomery early on. That's 3rd possession. About 4.5 minutes left in the first quarter. Moving to the second quarter, the Lions start to get things done. Another win by a defensive tackle. This is a run by Gibbs. In fact, it's a Jahmyr Gibbs video, but I thought that I had to show just a couple of instances of how clean some of these wins were at the interior line position. Look at this, just smacking the right guard out of the way. Now, Gibbs' speed, getting downhill so quickly to the line of scrimmage, still creates a 4-yard gain on a 1st and 10. But that's an absolutely dominating win on the inside. And Detroit, Ben Johnson and Goff still able to get things done despite having 2 really impressive defensive tackles in there playing for Minnesota in 99 and 97. So I love this play. This is 2nd and 6. The very next play after that 4-yard gain. Gibbs is obviously in the backfield. Motion, St. Brown across. Just a swing pass with 3 lead blockers here. This is close to hitting. And what I mean by saying hitting is Gibbs running down the left sideline and possibly having an opening with a converging safety. I think Laporta goes for like a home run block, basically hits a single or maybe a walk, however you want to refer to it. Those guys are able to close down against Jameson Williams and basically prevent Gibbs from getting any more. I love the horizontal nature of it. The ball is on the right hash, so the swing pass is to the field, getting the lead blocker, the extra lead blocker with St. Brown, out to the field side. Don't think you're getting enough done here with Jameson Williams. Again, I think Laporta is going for a home run, kind of bounces off of that guy. Great pursuit by Minnesota is the only thing that kept that from being more than an 8-yard gain. Essentially a toss play from a conceptual standpoint. With Gibbs, the speed, the ability to stretch things horizontally is a huge threat. Same drive, early third quarter. I think this may be 2 plays later. Perhaps it's actually the very next play. 11 personnel, really cool adaptation in terms of what they do with the tight end. In this case, it's Laporta. So as we get the end zone angle, we'll come back to the all-22, just so you know. As we get the end zone angle, it's actually Brock Wright, my apologies, at fullback. And then they're going to run a zone scheme to this side with the offensive lineman. And check out what Brock Wright does on the backside. He's going to dig out and essentially cut the backside defensive end. Additional to that, Minnesota, and I have seen this happen so many times in the last 2 years, they're blitzing the safety Smith off the weak side. And what happens is, let's say, for example, Smith at his normal safety position had his feet positioned in that area. Once Gibbs pops through on the front side, which we know he does here for 45 yards, Smith could potentially be a guy there to either influence him towards the sideline or possibly make the tackle. But Brock Wright, with the cut here on the backside edge defender, allows the offensive line to move up to the second level a little quicker than perhaps normal. Sewell gets a big block on 54. Easy cut for Gibbs. I mean, one-on-one in space, even though Bynum is a heck of an athlete, the free safety for them. It's borderline impossible for anyone to deal with him. Additional to that, I think Jameson Williams scooting all the way from the other side of the field to try to get involved at the point of attack or past the point of attack once Gibbs busts it. Edge defender kind of getting up the field. It's 44. Again, a guy who at this point I don't really know what to call him. They pretty much line him up everywhere. 45-yard touchdown, really plugged in Detroit's offense, and I think loosened up Minnesota defensively. Second quarter, next possession, really the Jahmyr Gibbs show for part of this possession. I believe this is the 6th possession, so we've skipped forward here actually. Left side, look at the space that is there all of a sudden for Gibbs into the boundary. You can see it, a slight double on the edge defender down to the bottom side of the screen. Minnesota is doing something that very few teams do, in fact, with these compressed alignments. So compressed alignment means a formation where everyone is packed in from a horizontal standpoint. You can see ball on the left hash. Outside receiver is 3 yards inside the top of the numbers, and the outside receiver to the other hash is just outside of the hash. Really compressed. Look at the edge defender here from Minnesota. And the way that Detroit's going to block this is really cool. Tim Patrick is going to initially deal with or basically have his ass kicked by the edge defender for a moment. And then the tight end helps him out, basically digs that edge defender out of there. Gibbs hits it hard, breaks one tackle on the edge defender, tries to spin out of a second one, and you've got an 8-yard gain into the boundary from an under center alignment. This one is a play that I thought loosened up Minnesota's defense. They played way more zone than I would have thought. I did think they were more heavy a zone team than is being reported by other places that give you coverage breakdown. Let's just do it that way. And they played even more zone than I expected. So Goff is going to be under center, it's a 2nd and 2 after that 8-yard run, by the way. Take a play action drop, essentially a star configuration with one tight end to each side, potential curls by the number 1 receiver to both sides, not necessarily what they run, and then Gibbs checking up underneath. Goff gets it out quickly, didn't necessarily like what he saw, and there's just so much room there for Gibbs to operate. I thought he was almost going to pinball bounce off of those two guys and break out of that. That's 18 yards. It's pretty shocking how quickly Gibbs can gain yards on what I think we would agree is generally innocuous receptions underneath. His ability as a runner obvious. He had a 45-yard run. He had a touchdown run that's coming up here in a moment on a third down play down near the goal line. Nonetheless, his ability as a receiver is almost more dangerous at times because he catches the ball and what looks like it should be a 6 or an 8-yard gain turns into 14 or 18. So this is the same possession. The Lions have chewed about 5.5 minutes off the clock in between plays that I showed you. It's a 3rd and 7 from the 8-yard line. So they theoretically could get the first down. And I actually talked about this a little bit in a video that I did earlier on this week. Another example of them taking Harrison Smith and needlessly lining him up off the edge. Yeah, it's part of Brian Flores' system. Cool. At this point, it's not working against the Detroit Lions. And this is a simple blocking scheme from Detroit in terms of the offensive line and the tight end up top. So the tight end is working up here. I think it's Laporta. Sewell is going to immediately work up to the second level. Everyone else working basically back. And you can see the hole that's created is between those two blocking schemes. And Sewell does a great job working up to the second level. 8-yard touchdown run by Gibbs. I mean, they're really in control at that point of this game. They're really in control of the Vikings defense. Goff was, I think, knew the front and everything that Minnesota was in from a standpoint of coverage and understood, hey, we've got an opportunity to run it here. Look at the lane that opens up. I mean, he was just right. This reminds me of 2 checks he made in the NFC Championship game. One of them, I'm sure you know exactly which one I'm talking about, is checking to a run play on like a 3rd and 11 to Gibbs to the field. This one reminds me of that. I firmly believe that there are plenty of times where Goff has 2 plays called in the huddle. Well, 2 plays given to him by Ben Johnson. Call this, and if they show that, then we run something else, whatever that something else is, option B. This is just too easy. And Brian Flores and the defensive staff for the Vikings, I think, have to evolve. All right, so we're going to fast forward a lot here. We're going to skip most of the third quarter, and this is going to be the slowdown drive at the end of the fourth quarter where I think Dan Campbell and those guys played it brilliantly. Jahmyr Gibbs played a big role. Amon-Ra St. Brown had a huge catch, contested catch, I think. Goff pretty much put the throw right on target. Gibbs had 2 touches, maybe 3, depending on how you look at it, that were tremendously important. This one is a really nice cut. It ends up only being 4 yards. You're trailing 29-28. 2:32 left in the game. It's 11 personnel. So Gibbs is pressing downhill, this defensive tackle, 97, trying to hard joint, basically get his cleats dug into the ground and not give ground. So Gibbs veers off path because of the defensive tackle and then tries to make 44 miss. It just happens so fast. He's just got that, what we would say as coaches, he's just got that boom, boom. He just moves quickly and in a sudden manner such that if you aren't in position, 44 was there, it was condensed or compressed space. He's an impressive guy sometimes, even on a 4-yard gain. This one is not. This is 14 yards. It's a designed cutback on a short toss, in my opinion. Minnesota fast flows often with their inside linebackers and their safeties. And so what I mean by fast flow is, now this is actually Andrew Van Ginkel lined up at inside linebacker, Pace on the backside, and then 44, kind of a hybrid 4-3 look, if you will. Even though Van Ginkel's obviously not a Mike linebacker, you got a huge space down here to the bottom side out of 12 personnel. This is a 2nd and 6 after that short run by Gibbs. I think it's a short toss. And so what I mean by that is oftentimes toss plays are tossed out to the edge such that the running back can try to get outside. This looks like a toss, and I think that's why you're getting horizontal reactions from these guys. The 49ers do this brilliantly. The Ravens have started to do it with Derrick Henry as well. It ends up being 14 yards, and it happens in an instant with Jahmyr Gibbs. When you're charting plays like I do, I wish they would say Jahmyr Gibbs is in the game, so I knew, like, I need to be looking immediately because sometimes I'm looking at my second screen and I'm typing information to try to get as much pre-snap data as possible. Same play, end zone angle, just so you know. I think that there's a huge gap or bubble between that edge defender and the defensive tackle, I think it's Tillery in a 3 technique. And then Sewell is basically bumping Tillery and then moving up to Van Ginkel. Gets a big piece of him. Also a really nice job by the right guard and the center, working on the 2 interior linemen. As the game progressed, it seemed like Detroit's offensive line got stronger, but also had better contact balance, dealing with 99 and 97. I don't know. I mean, the Ravens obviously have a great trio of defensive tackles. Those guys, 99 and 97, are extremely disruptive. The more I watch the film, like I said, the more I'm impressed with what Ben Johnson and those guys were able to do over the course of the second, third quarter, and then this drive where they basically decided we're going to go into third gear and we're still going to go down the field and win the game. 11 personnel after the 14-yard run by Gibbs. This is a brilliant play. Goff recognizes it immediately, flips it out to Gibbs in the flats. The Vikings are lucky that it didn't hit for more. We're talking about a minute and 32, I think, when the ball is snapped. Pace, who played a whale of a game. He had a defensive touchdown, obviously had a sack. Very aggressive player, but I felt like there was 3 or 4 snaps during the game where he kind of lost sight. Now, it could be a call blitz, obviously, where he kind of lost sight of the formation and the threat that is available. Great design by the Lions. Don't get me wrong. You got 2 potential verticals. And then Gibbs, I almost said St. Brown, leaking out to the bottom side. Goff was looking downfield initially, just wide open, into the boundary where we know Ben Johnson likes to attack. 16 yards in an instant. It was right here when Greg Olsen said, okay, I guess it's going to work out for them, this slow play in it. I recognized it after the 14-yard run to Gibbs. I was like, okay, they're retaining the ability to run the football in this, quote, 2-minute drill. So it's not a true 2-minute drill like we think of in the modern game of football. Credit to Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell for recognizing that and exploiting it. I think Minnesota was playing defense as if this was a typical 2-minute drill. I don't want to denigrate their coaching staff, particularly their defensive staff. They've been playing extremely well. But to me, it seemed like they did not adjust at all to the fact that Detroit was running the ball and utilizing short passing game, like the 16-yard pass there to Gibbs. And then when they did finally switch gears a little bit is when Ben Johnson and them threw the ball to St. Brown to basically create this situation. I think this is an underrated play. Yeah, it's no gain on the play for Gibbs, but I believe the ball is snapped at 1:12, something like that, and they run 5 seconds off the clock. It seems like a lot of time for the little bit of gameplay that you're seeing here. But I think it was crucial because it gave Minnesota far less time to be able to get off any plays at all. 2 more kneel downs, obviously. The Lions are able to kick the game-winning field goal, Jake Bates. I thought Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, obviously, were the guys who made a huge difference on Sunday. Everyone else had a role. Don't ask me what the heck that dance is there. Jake Bates should put that in his locker and leave it there. But I don't know how many other teams. Well, yes, I do. I actually know one other team who has different guys that can be the, quote, leading men each week, and it's the Ravens offense. These 2 offenses are very similar in some ways. Now, Jameson Williams being out for a 2-game suspension, I believe it's a 2-game suspension, kind of minimizes what I'm about to say. But I think both of these offenses have the dynamic or the element of any 1 or 2 guys from among a group of 5 or 6 can be the one who has the most impact against any particular defense that you play. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery have exchanged roles as the, quote, lead running back, not just from game to game, but also within games at times. St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond took over a particular possession, 2 third-down wins against Gilmore. In fact, one of them where he made him fall down in coverage and then scored a touchdown. This is a complete offense. I do think they can withstand the loss of Jameson Williams for a couple of weeks. I don't pretend to have knowledge about the situation with Jameson Williams, nor care, to be honest with you. The NFL is operating to the height of hypocrisy, thinking that many players in this league are not utilizing PEDs or some type of substance that is, quote, banned. I have no idea what Jameson Williams was tested positive for. I really don't care. I just hope that after his 2-game suspension, he comes back and he can have the same type of impact that he's had for most of the season, other than, of course, his 1-catch performance against the Vikings on Sunday. Jahmyr Gibbs, I thought, put on a show, 116 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, including the 45-yarder that was just shocking, the way that it sliced up Minnesota's defense and forced them to kind of reconsider some of the blitz choices they were making, and they didn't adjust. As you saw, Harrison Smith, the same exact blitz on the 3rd and 7 from the 8-yard line when Jahmyr Gibbs runs it in for an 8-yard touchdown. You guys let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. The plays that I utilized to illustrate how clean and how open Jahmyr Gibbs suddenly started to be around early second quarter, and then again in the fourth quarter when the Detroit Lions used a somewhat anomalous version of the 2-minute drill to work their way down the field slowly and get a game-winning field goal from Jake Bates. I appreciate you guys' time, man. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comment section. As you may know, likes and comments help drive the content further. So if you listen this long, first of all, thank you. Second of all, please consider liking and commenting down below to support my work. And if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this video and some of my thoughts in the film that I displayed, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.